Welcome to today's special ITWC webinar for those of you that are thinking about digital transformation. You know, we find that it's usually a very slow and deliberate process, or we think it is, but it's definitely a very methodical process, digital transformation. And what's interesting about today's story with this well-known Canadian company is that they managed this process in a few short months. Doesn't mean that's for everybody, but it is a very interesting story of when the rubber hits the road, exactly what you need to do to make that project successful. So I hope you find it instructive, and let's get right into it. My name is Corey Cox. I am the CIO of the Tanda Group of Companies. We are a transportation and logistics company, as well as an outsourced full maintenance service based in Ontario with outreach to Canada and the US. And I will be your moderator for today. But more importantly, we have two very special guests with us that I'm very eager to introduce you to. First, we have with us Jason Falbo, who is the CTO at Mircom, Canada's most successful intelligent building solutions provider. He is a software engineer, is a graduate of the University of Western Ontario, and got his MBA at a joint program by Bocconi University in Milan and UCLA in Los Angeles. He has led the design and development of multiple successful products in the domains of fire, security, and automation. And as you'll hear in a bit, Mircom is a third-generation, family-owned business, and Jason, I really do appreciate that, working for one like that myself, that design, manufacture, and distribute smart building products to over 100 countries in the world. He is also an executive in residence at George Brown College in Toronto, and a member of the Industry Advisory Board for the Lassonde School of Engineering at York University. Basically, Jason is who I want to be in my next life. Our second special guest, Brad Evans, who is a cloud strategist with Dell Technologies. He's a frequent commentator at our webinars. Thank you very much, Brad. And he's dealt with hundreds of customers that are trying to get the best out of their move to the cloud. And through the lens of his experience today, he's going to help us focus on those lessons that listeners in the audience will be able to take away, we hope, and apply to their situations. And also importantly, I'd like to thank Dell Technologies, who is the sponsor of today's webinar. And without your sponsorship, we wouldn't be able to hear this great story from Mircom. So thank you, Brad. So before we get going here, just a couple of housekeeping notes for everyone. There will be opportunities to ask questions throughout the webinar. If you use your chat button at the bottom right-hand side of your you'll be able to see them. And depending on the flow of the conversation, we may answer them as we go, or we might save some for the end, depending on the context of the question or how much time we have to answer it at that moment. Importantly, too, there will be a poll about a third of the way through the webinar today. We encourage you to take the time to fill that out. It helps us understand where you are at in your digital transformation journey. And just as importantly, there will be an evaluation at the end of the webinar, which will help us again understand, the right subjects and presentations that we can engineer for you in the future that keeps this information relevant to you. And as a thank you for doing that, because we know you're all very busy, we will send you a gift card. So thank you for that. Jason, let's get going. Let's talk about the Mircom story. I know you've got a great history and a great story. Tell us a little more about the company.
Sure, happy to do that, Corey. Mircom is founded back in 1991, but in fact our roots go back to the early 1960s. So the founding team at Mircom was involved in a predecessor company in the building space, mainly in the fire life safety domains, also in audio products and intercom products, some of which made their way into residential occupancies. The subdivision explosion in Canada happened through the 70s and 80s. Many people were familiar with your Mirtone radio intercom system that would stream radio from your kitchen up to the bedrooms or basements of homes. So that audio system roots, as fire codes changed and building codes changed over the decades, gave way to the early public address, voice address systems, and voice evacuation systems that mated very well with fire detection and alarm components. And that company was able to then start distributing throughout Canada and into the United States. The company, predecessor company, was acquired back in 1988. After a 3-year non-compete, my father, Tony, got back into the game as Mircom, which was the communication division of the predecessor company, and restarted up distributing fire detection and alarm equipment throughout the country, and finally moving into proprietary design of new systems and IP development through the mid-90s and into the 2000s. We've now expanded our business, as you've mentioned. We follow the UL mark around the world, which gives us great access into 100 different countries around the globe. And beyond the fire detection life safety roots of our portfolio, we provide all manner of equipment for intelligent buildings, including access control security solutions, intercom communication solutions, and building automation solutions. Beyond the hardware itself, we're also now involved in the unified building dashboards, where we provide monitoring solutions through software which can run on workstations and our mobile phones and web applications to give people intuitive information as to what's happening in their building from an emergency or a convenience standpoint, making buildings safer, smarter, and more livable, and branding ourselves as a smart building company and, of course, smart cities company as things get more intelligent in the real estate sector, both at home and abroad.
Fascinating. Fantastic. Great story. So, to the nexus of what started us on our journey. September of last year, in a bit of flex yourself, juggling a lot of balls, transitioning roles, and you had a very significant incident that affected an important part of your system. Tell us about that catalyst.
Sure. So something probably nobody wants to see happen a week before their year end, as you're preparing to close the books and record your gains, hopefully for the 12 months that just passed. We woke up and it was September 21st. In fact, it was a Saturday, and got a message from our IT director that something seems suspicious with our email server. Upon further investigation, it seemed like the primary exchange server that we were using for our emails, which was an on-prem box, was offline. We didn't understand exactly why it was offline or what had happened at the time, but upon some further investigation, we determined that there was some type of security breach, and the server, in fact, was being attacked from an unknown actor somewhere in the world. So from there, that led into a sequence of events and different real-time kind of emergency plan activations and referencing our business continuity plans and recovery plans and planning for the worst-case scenario. We made the determination that now was prime to really take a hard look at what we were doing from a systems and security posture and possibly accelerate some of that investment that we needed to get back up and running. So when we regathered at the office on Monday morning on the 23rd, we really looked at what we needed to do to modernize our company and our technology IT infrastructure. And we set ourselves on a path that was, as was mentioned a little bit earlier, a very accelerated path to get up and running in the new fiscal year with a modern hybrid cloud architecture and infrastructure that met the needs of both our company and also our security position.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I think it's a great time to move to a poll question, given what we've heard about what launched you into this journey, maybe a little sooner than you thought. So I'd like to ask everyone to tell us what prompted your first move into the cloud. Is it cost savings and efficiencies, pressure from competitors, leadership, security, or maybe you have not yet made that move, or you're only in the process of it, but we would still like to hear that as well. As we know, this is a big journey for all companies, big and small. And as Brad, as we look at these results coming in here, we're seeing a significant number that maybe haven't made that leap yet, but cost savings is what's your thoughts on this?
I'm not going to pick on just cost savings by itself. Let's tackle the whole sentence because it's a little fun there. You've got cost savings and I see it as a primary motivator for a lot of people to go and investigate. Can I do what I'm doing today on premise? Can I do it off premise or hosted solutions and leverage that? Instead of on premise exchange, 365, like simple things. But then you've got the word there, efficiencies, right? Because a lot of organizations are trying to leverage a cloud technology to gain those efficiencies. Efficiencies sometimes mean people, process, frictionless system efficiencies, and sometimes that kind of goes against the idea of cost savings, right? Yeah. Again, like we chatted about this previously, but sometimes agility is not cheaper. I can't think of many instances, but it's still the biggest prompt we see.
Very good. Very, very interesting. And great thoughts from you there, Brad. I appreciate that. And I think we're going to circle back and talk a little more about that a bit later. Okay, so thank you everyone for taking the time to answer those questions for us. And let's move on here. So Jason, you identified an urgent need to change.
Correct.
Let's talk about what did you do next? So you knew you needed to change. What was that meeting on Monday? Let's elaborate on that. And where was the clarity to say, okay, now is the time. This is an indicator for us that we've got to change what we do.
Well, when we sat down, like in any project, you understand that there's a sort of overhead, and given the overhead to prepare maybe your first server in the cloud, it's almost like you're 50% of the way there to getting 100 servers up into the cloud. So the big thing for us was really understanding which platform we wanted to migrate to. What were some of the key decision factors that we made with respect to cost, security, the support that we had through partners that were involved in that process and guiding us into our cloud architecture. And once you kind of get over those initial humps of what do we want to do, whether you're doing 1, 10, 50, or 100 different services that get moved, that part is a little bit more easy on the implementation side. So those initial discussions were really around which cloud do we want to use, which servers and services are very important for us to move, and setting the priority on those. And really for us, it started with getting our Active Directory up, including the Microsoft Exchange server to facilitate emails and be better protected for the future in case there was any other issues with email services being offline. And hand in hand with email, of course, was the Office 365 suite of products. So we moved from kind of a legacy Office environment to an online environment, which has a lot of peripheral benefits. So rather than running around and having to do CD-ROM disk installations of PowerPoint and Word and everything else, moving to the Office 365 environment now allowed us to surface those applications directly within web browsers. So really reducing the maintenance for our IT team and solving a problem at the same time. Beyond those three initial servers, the Active Directory, the Exchange, and the Office, we really want to make sure that we had correct monitoring in place to protect us against any future risks or threats that might present themselves to our company. And from a monitoring standpoint, we looked at two main areas. One, we wanted just kind of uptime monitoring of our servers and services. So a quick assessment is, are things online or offline? That would give us the ability to do further investigation. And then an activity or a logging-based monitoring system that could really give us more intuition for suspicious activity to ensure that we were well prepared for anything that might come up. The main application servers that we moved over in priority order included our ERP system, which also happens to be a Microsoft solution, Dynamics AX. And then beyond the ERP, we looked at our main source control servers and our IP servers for engineering from a hardware, software, and mechanical standpoint. After we got those main corporate infrastructure pieces up and running, we turned our attention and focus to the branches and looked at what needed to happen on the workstation side. And really in moving forward from a modern hybrid cloud architecture standpoint and having that security consideration, that's where a lot of the time and effort was spent. So we probably spent about 4 to 6 weeks migrating all of the legacy hardware that we had across our 20-plus locations worldwide, including recalling hardware to upgrade to the latest operating systems, to install latest virus scan software, to ensure that group policy was now being enforced in a correct way, to ensure that the software and applications people are using were approved and allowed by our IT department. Another big change that we made, we'll talk a little bit more about further, is adding two-factor authentication to ensure the access from our remote locations and servers' workstations was better protected. And then from a backup standpoint, we really wanted to do some retraining with our users to offload the responsibility of data backup and collection from our IT department. So we rolled out in a big way both Microsoft SharePoint and OneDrive. So that would allow end users to take control over their data a little bit better, and also give them access to their data as they move throughout the world in engaging with their customers and our partners, so that they would have better access to this information to help them and support them in developing their business and markets.
Fascinating. You know, that was, wow, let me unpack some of that. That was a lot. So I heard in this change, I heard security several times, and we're going to talk about that. What I thought was interesting too, I heard you using infrastructure as a service by moving some of your design software and everything into the cloud. I heard software as a service with Office 365 and SharePoint. I heard you migrating your Active Directory into the cloud as well. And importantly too, I heard you talk about changing client devices, changing out those the desktops, tablets, whatever devices you're using, and understanding that that was also part of the need for change, and that also was part of the security posture that you were trying to take as well. So that was a lot to, like, how did you come to the conclusion that this part, all by yourselves? Did you have partners?
We had a lot of great partners, actually. You know, on the question of hardware itself, Dell has been a longtime partner of Mircom, and what we did is we did an assessment. We had probably around 800 different pieces of equipment that we needed to do a quick assessment on and determine if this equipment would graduate through to the new Mircom 2.0 infrastructure, as we call it, or if it needed to be remediated, replaced in a big way. So the first assessment was probably about 20 to 30% of our devices that definitely were not going to make it through. We probably had another 20 to 30% of devices that were with suspicion, possibly going to make it through, but needed a deeper look from our IT department and our staff. And then, you know, a good set of devices which actually were already in the process of being remediated or replaced that we were able to leverage and use. So initial assessment was really done with partners to kind of get suggestions, and we had a lot of build versus buy decisions to make. In some cases, you look at just little things that you don't consider. We have branch offices in India. So what is the cost of taking a laptop from India and getting that back to Toronto, and the downtime that user is going to see while you're remediating, changing operating system, upgrading software, refreshing hard drives and storage and anything else that needs to happen, sending it back to them. At some point, you're probably better off just issuing new equipment. So in consultation with our partners such as Dell, we were able to kind of make those assessments and do the right thing from a budgetary standpoint that met our objectives both from the security and the modern architecture infrastructure side.
Brad, security. Jason has mentioned security a few times in this.
Oh, yeah.
I think this is a critical part of the decision process when you're rebuilding, include security as part of your thinking.
Well, part of what I thought was so cool and so interesting is you mentioned that you want to have this compliance training, and you wanted to be able to ensure that from core to these edge devices and whatnot, that we are compliant. And it's this ongoing exercise that now I imagine is also implemented in there, right? You introduced the idea of monitoring and automated ticketing systems to help remediate that. Security is not a checklist. It's a practice. It's included in the culture now, I hear. It's, you know, part of the day-to-day thoughts. It's not just about the latest patch. It's a continual exercise that I see is now implemented in this org now. And it's just such a cool discussion because there are some users there that had a lot of disruption. But part of the outcome of this massive change for them was now they get to control parts of those items. They feel likely more empowered in that way. So there's a lot of common themes here to know that this is all throughout the process, not a bolted-on exercise.
Yeah, excellent point. Excellent observation. You're absolutely right. And when you think about security in your design, mm-hmm. you find that it does become pervasive in everything that you build from that point forward. Mm-hmm. Excellent point. Monitoring, you also mentioned, Brad, Jason, you discovered monitoring was an important part of knowing that everything was going the way it should, monitoring for those exceptions. Process change, though, too. So, changing processes also means, looking at people, devices, software. What I find interesting here is you also decided to make that effect, that transformation that you were going through, immediately visible to your customers through customer support, whether they were internal or your external customers. Explain Zendesk, why, and how that played a role in We Need to Change.
Project management is successful when you use the right tools to make things very easy for people to understand on a task-by-task level, really decompressing or deconstructing a large task into a set of smaller achievable tasks at a couple hours or maybe half-day levels. And the amount of servers and workstations and infrastructure changes that we wanted to affect in a very short period of time, the coordination of all of that activity was critically important to our ability to succeed in that task. So prior to the incident, we kind of used emails like a lot of companies do. If you have an IT issue, it's either an email or maybe it's a post-it note you go drop off on someone's desk, or you hover over, and the dreaded hover of someone standing at your computer and saying, my phone is not working. And we had a lot of that, because once you are in the midst of this conversion transformation of your critical services and people are offline, in some ways they have no choice. They don't really know what to do. So they were showing up to the IT department very regularly, sometimes multiple times per day or per hour, and saying, help me with this, help me with this. So we very quickly understood that we needed to kind of organize along the lines of some tool that would help us to service the users, provide some level of service where they knew that we were attentive and we felt that their issues were important, we wanted to address them, but also critically important for us to be able to prioritize what needed to get done in what order. So a tool such as Zendesk, which is an online system, was rolled out throughout our company, where every user who had some issue, and you miss things along the way, you bring 5 servers up, but the 6th one, which you deemed not critical at all, was still something people were using for file backups or storage or something else. The ticketing system allowed us to really have that ongoing conversation with our users, which had 2 benefits. One, we tracked all of the requests so that we knew when we were complete, we would address all of these outstanding issues or items, and they wouldn't get lost along the way. And 2, they had great visibility throughout, which kept that line of communication between, in some cases, very, very remote users and a corporate function at head office very open. And I think when you're enacting these types of large digital transformation projects, you need to ensure that the communication is clear, people have available channels to get their questions answered, and once you've answered the question once, you have a great system in place to redistribute that learning throughout the other users in the organization. So involving our people throughout every step of the way kept people understanding that, yes, there might be pain today, and it's going to be difficult for the next couple hours or couple days or couple weeks, but this is where we're going. And that engagement and common vision towards the end goal and the end state for the company was really helpful, so that people would be a little bit more patient through some of the daily pain points that they were having.
I know you and I were talking, and you told me around your journey even through 2-factor authentication, but let's talk about 2FA first. What made you decide that the old user ID password wasn't good enough?
Well, when we spent a little bit more time to understand what happened with our email server in the first place, we realized the issue there was really from a legacy application and weak password protection. So, when you're fixing something, you don't want to kind of go back to the same problem that you had in the first place. So we looked at what was available in the landscape to better protect access to our important assets, and 2-factor authentication was actually a nice, convenient way to have that added security without making it too difficult. So, for example, a lot of times in financial industries or banking transactions, you'll actually have a security dongle that people will carry around with them that may be a little bit more secure, but definitely inconvenient. And how are you managing these things? And they go missing, and what do you do when they go missing, of course, right? So again, consultation with our partners, 2FA was mentioned as a nice next level solution. The other benefit was 2FA was something that a lot of our users were already using in their personal and daily lives. So a lot of mail services like Gmail and Yahoo Mail had already introduced that technology in the personal domain, which made it a lot easier for us to bring into the corporate domain and have a high level of adoption and user understanding from day one.
That's interesting. I never quite made that connection before. That is a very good point. So there wasn't just hitting people blindside with something that they didn't even see the value of before, because they were already understanding its value. Brad, security. I think there's a thought of there sometimes, throw it up in the cloud, we're good.
Well, look, there's a few things here to deconstruct that were really cool. Like, part of this is the idea of originally your ticketing system and avoiding the hovering right off the bat. And that idea of prioritizing, you used a cool phrasing here of deconstructing this larger task into a bunch of smaller ones. That orchestration and that level, that is so critical for these orgs now, to understand who does what and when, and making them into a series of jobs. I mean, we see that as a way to exercise an agile project, yes, but even on the kind of geekier side here, right? That's the new way of making applications, this microservice, stateless, orchestrated way.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of similarities there. When you talked around this and this whole, before we get to the security piece, I kind of want to tackle the critical importance of a communication strategy. You can't have this massive change without all these involvements of all these internal or external stakeholders, right? Whatever that means. You've got all these individuals who are used to this offline sort of, email, help me please, can I come by your desk in 2 minutes kind of way, to now having this empowerment where...
That's putting it politely.
Yeah, isn't it just? They're saying this with a smile here, right? No, I mean, but what you've managed to do there that might have had maybe it was not intentional and whatnot, but you've kind of made the process of resolving a problem, yes, you've empowered the user, they feel they can be loud anytime, but you now have taken a subjective approach and made it a very objective outcome, right? Because a non-critical workload for that one person who could be very loud is now suddenly priority because of the volume of their voice and the look on their face. And now it's how many users is this affected, how many people are involved, where they work on it instead. You've added more of an objective beauty to that instead of just being handling to the loudest person in front of the desk at the time.
And it really helps with assigning owners to the task as well, because not only managing the users, but managing the team and the staff. When you're in a situation where you have 500 tickets that you need to deal with, that P1, P2, P3, and these are mine and these are not mine is very helpful, because in terms of efficiency, we spend a lot of time on noise, and the more noise that we can block out, the more efficient we can be and productive in the things that we actually pay attention to. So it's a well-known trick in development communities. The better focus you have, the better you get things done. And the top companies in the world achieve things faster because they're blocking out the noise and focusing on the things and the tasks that are at hand.
Right. I mean, it's no secret that in leadership roles, when you have a series of staff, that one of the leaders' roles you have is to be that noise filter for your teams there too. Yes, of course. But in all these cross-functional teams, that offline, humane way doesn't really work anymore. So having a strong, orchestrated ticketing system to say, John is responsible for X, Y, Z. So when there's a delay in the process, I know to go to John. I'm not going to ask, parallel to other people. There's that visibility back and forth between all the teams of what's happening and what's in the way. And why I wanted to go down this path and deconstruct is we want to talk about security throughout this, yes. But I don't feel that you're able to talk about security holistically unless you talk about activity that's created this security thought. There's a balancing act of productivity improvement with what is in the way of the users. Like, we want to empower end users, but do it in the safest way. I mean, you're not the
and those conflict at times.
Yeah, they absolutely. You can lock down a box, close the door, and have 2FA. How about 8FA? Right? Have 8 factors. Text this, do this dance and whatnot, and then we'll let you into your email. But that's not the realistic thing. The societal norm that you mentioned is part of our lives. There's this new expectation that we have on productivity. Look at what things like Dropbox has started. I could swipe a card, I have storage. I don't understand hard drives at all, but now I have it. Now I have a share. That's it's you do this outcome, you get this. Anyone in the world can go to Amazon and spin up a VM now. They don't even know what that means. It's amazing the world we have today. And these societal norms have now, for you and a benefit, come into the workplace. 2FA, that's not new. I need to sign in on a new device to check my email. It's going to text me and give me a password to put in or something. And it's so cool that that's part of society now because it greatly benefits what you want to do. It's not new.
One example of the conflict between productivity and security, we implemented Proofpoint, and Proofpoint is best known as a spam filter, but it's really an email management system. So you can see what's happening with respect to incoming email, outgoing email, and troubleshoot any of those issues. And from the security posture standpoint, you want to block absolutely every attachment, because every attachment that comes through is a potential security risk to your organization. From a usability standpoint, those are critical zip files and MDB databases, which we use for our configuration files of our programs and hardware that we sell, to PDFs and other documents that people need to do their jobs, responding to bids, design documents to customers. And that's something that day one was not the right implementation. It took us a series of tries and changes to that system before we came to some point of balance between what we want to do from a security standpoint and what users need from a productivity standpoint.
I'd like to remind everyone too, don't forget, you can ask questions. You've got some great industry experts here that I'm sure can answer a variety. of questions that you might have about that digital transformation journey. So don't forget, put in your questions. We will get to your question if you should ask it. Okay, so you got all this nifty software and cloud positioning and infrastructure as a service, and you've got Zendesk, so you're organizing your support requests, and your people, they just switch gears the next day, we're all good.
Yeah, everyone's
right,
happy,
Jason?
right?
That's what happens.
I was the most unpopular person in the organization. I might still be, but definitely for about a month or so, I'm sure I was getting not all the gifts that I was maybe expecting to get.
So we learned that one of the biggest challenges to this kind of change is often ourselves.
Yes.
And so knowing that your staff, your people had on board, that they had to have the same focus that you had in the boardroom, tell us, Ernie, about getting your people on side and what that process looked like.
Yeah, and I was joking, of course. It was obviously not any one person against other people in the organization, but change is difficult, and human nature is to resist that change. And it goes back to what I talked about earlier, the communication plan. And beyond the communication plan, it's kind of how do you get a revolution going? Is, one person talks to another person who talks to another who talks to another. So what was really key for us in helping people to get the understanding of what we're doing and feel comfortable along that way was to find kind of domain leaders, maybe one per department, that would help to really explain what was going on. Of course, we couldn't engage with hundreds of people face to face, just logistically it was impossible, but we could engage with 5 who could engage with 5, who could engage with 10, who could engage with 20. So we tried to develop kind of this community or committee of people that were working their way through the different channels and layers of the organization to really have that support and explanation as to what we were doing. And to be quite frank and honest with you, some people who absolutely resisted that change did not make it through the transformation. But it helped us also to identify, as a business, we have to offer best-in-class technology solutions meeting the modern needs of our customers. So if you have people that are unwilling to change and not willing to kind of move along with the company's doing, a digital transformation or some other type of initiative within the company will help to identify both those people who might not align with the mission of the leadership and where the company is going, and also those people who are maybe more aligned than you originally thought or perceived. So throughout this process, we had people moving in both directions. Some people who were not really involved from a digital transformation or IT posture strategy before we engaged in this project, that became absolutely critical, and we elevated them through, and they have now come out the backside with a more important or a more senior role in the organization. So we're very happy to see that growth in a lot of our people. And some of the people who we had counted on for key leadership positions and other activities within the company, we understood that maybe our vision was not necessarily aligned with their vision, and there was a conflict that would have to be resolved in a different way. So these types of difficult situations, like anything in life, that you're in a competition or you're in a fight with something, you quickly are able to see the next level of the true colors of the people that you're working with. So for us, it was something that accelerated some of the other initiatives that we had going on from a staffing standpoint. We elevated a number of people into IT, into newer roles, more senior roles, and they were able to demonstrate and also have access to different leaders within the organization. Before this transformation, IT was kind of, that department in that room off to the back that nobody really talked to. And when you're in a digital transformation project, it was an amazing opportunity for our IT department to engage with senior leadership, ownership, and different leads in different areas of the company. And today, they've become fast friends. IT is now a reliable source because people see what they can offer beyond the functional expertise that they have in terms of a good support infrastructure and system for the business initiatives that they have. So digital transformation projects are a great way for people in the IT function to really get that visibility and help grow your career within an organization.
So what I've heard here is, it sounds to me like organically, you discovered some individuals in the organization that might have gone unnoticed who turned out to be more able to accept this new paradigm and actually embrace it from the sounds of it. And, you use a term when we were talking last of, we know who's on the bus. And I thought that was a great term. It just says, hey, we're all heading in the same direction. We need to know who's with us. And I thought that was great. And what I'm hearing is some of that sometimes was a surprise. And for those people where others may have seen a challenge, maybe a threat to their position, to their role, to their future usefulness, others found that they actually had new value to the organization, and you rewarded them.
For sure, and it's an opportunity. We wanted to do this very quickly. Part of the reason was, as I mentioned, we were transferring from past fiscal to new fiscal year. So we really want to start new fiscal with the new architecture infrastructure in place as soon as we could. So we did a lot of work, evenings, weekends, throughout Saturdays and Sundays, people sacrificing their own time, coming to the office, giving up of their personal family time to work on these types of projects, because they really believed in this and its importance and priority initiative for the company. So these types of major projects are great ways for people to really give that impression to leadership of the company that they are invested, that they want to be involved, and that they want to grow and perform at a level that maybe wasn't available to them before such projects.
Yeah, like I see that there's kind of another piece here. Like I kind of group that thought together, because when we engage in some of these cloud or systems management, there's a misconception around digital transformation. I see that it seems as this is a data-driven and a technology play, but there's so much involved. Like we talked about communication strategy before, but this thing that we've talked about, these two halves here of what I call a cultural strategy here. You've got part of to help adopt this new transformation is you recognized organically that yes, some people are not on the bus, and that's tragic, and that's how that goes. But you've also run these champions here, these people that are on these different teams here to kind of help encourage adoption and have moved up into other roles here as these champions and whatnot. And they've become leaders of this new era and this change you have. And that's a cool change that you need to see. So there has to be some kind of a cultural strategy to help avoid that resistance to change that we're so hesitant on for sometimes ourselves. And really when you're going through a massive org, are these people on the bus, and how do I do that quickly? I see there's a lot of success there when you find those peers and those teams to create those champion roles. But something I thought that was kind of cool that you did, and this is an outcome that people in IT itself and traditional ways dream of. But you went from a hover break fix kind of role of you are in the way of my problem being solved kind of desk, right? The unhappy hours happen as an IT help desk report, I'm sure. Into these now, you're a business partner. You're at the table all the time. All of these, marketing, financial technologies, all of these operational initiatives are also IT projects in this digital world. So it's so cool. Just these people go from the sad sack at the desk into these strategic partners. And these are the two changes I see throughout any of these transformations.
Brad, let me tell you, this was probably one of the most exciting projects I've been involved in over 10 years I've been at the company. When you're talking about digital transformation, a transformation is exciting. You're going from not necessarily the Stone Ages, but you're coming into the modern age. And sometimes people, you know what you should be doing and where you want to get to, but it's really when do you start? And when you make that decision in your mind, whether you're going on a new diet, or you're going to go on a vacation, or you're going to go embark on a new education, when you actually say, today is the day that I'm going to start the rest of my life, that becomes really exciting. And it was motivating for our IT team, but also for our company. We are a technology company. We are selling the best-in-class technology for buildings, and we compete with the biggest players anywhere around the world. So we want to have demonstrable success in using technology to solve problems. So the fact that we were solving our own problem today has also prepared us well for helping solve the problems of our customers and partners going forward. So I don't want this to sound like it was all a lot of work and it was crazy and we had to do things very fast and we didn't know what we were doing. This was a very exciting project for us. So we learned a lot throughout the way, but it was quite rewarding, not only for myself personally, but for the people that were involved in our company.
Excellent. The things you've said today, Jason and Brad, if I were to kind of encapsulate some of the ideas and the experiences that you've put together here, as we look at, first of all, you didn't waste a good crisis. Right? You had a problem and you turned it into an opportunity, and I think that's that's what a problem should be. It should be.
Sometimes the solution is there. It's just the budget's not, right? So this crisis really just got us the dollars to do things that we thought was a good plan anyway.
Hey, you take the money when you can. I've always said that. What I hear too is there's a clear direction. A clear direction is necessary right from the top. Everyone has to be on board. The executive itself must know what and why it's trying to accomplish. To Brad's point, communication though. Communicating that idea, communicating this new way of doing business, built in, bottom up, is clear and concise. You talked about that heavy duty engagement of your employees right up front to say, hey everyone, we're getting on a new train and this is what it's going to be like and this is what we're going to do, but these are going to be our outcomes. This is why we're doing it. It's positive.
Just one thing I'll add to that. So in the IT department, one of the first things we said is, in this project, leave your titles at the door. We look for people to get involved where they felt that they could best get involved. And sometimes when you're doing these projects, eliminating that hierarchy and the formal structure and roles, people get out of the mindset of this is my job, this is not my job. When you have a project, it's an opportunity for people to redevelop themselves and do the things that they know they can do well that they may not otherwise have the opportunity to do.
I'm hearing a lot of positivity, giving the people the opportunity, Brad, as Jason said, to redevelop themselves. This is a way to evolve. Know what you don't know. Know that you need partners, whether they're internal or subject matter experts that you should and should want to bring in to assist you on that journey. I heard that as well. Leverage those internal skills. Through that, you found champions you probably already knew you could count on, and you found brand new ones that have themselves been able to benefit on a personal level through that journey as well. And I think very importantly too, the IT department is not the IT department. The IT or technology and the people who manage that infrastructure and services are an equal part in the business. Their value has been learned through this. And what I'm hearing is that everyone believes they have a reason to be there, that they're an equal partner in the success of the company. And again, I think it's fascinating. Security, build it in. Day one, everything you're thinking about involves security as well. You don't just do it and think about it and tack it on later. And visibility, transparency. I heard those words more than once from both Brad and Jason, that what you now have is visibility and transparency, whether it's through the use of Zendesk, improved tests, or some of that frictionless computing that you've been able to put out there and use in your various cloud service providers. These to me are the lessons that I took away from this. But I think you left out something I think very important. Everyone has to know that as you were going through this very intense journey over a comparatively short period of time, tell us about that quarter's revenue as well.
So very strange because completely unexpected. After we enabled our people with this new modern technology that helped to support them do their jobs better, we found that the efficiencies and productivity gains came to us very, very quickly. So despite the fact that it was probably one of the most challenging projects we'd ever engaged in as a company throughout our first fiscal quarter of 2020, the results have actually shown that the quarter has the highest revenues we've ever had in the history of our company. And I strongly believe that's as a result of two things. One, the efficiency gains that you get from the new technology that we've implemented and put into the organization. But two, going back to earlier comments, there is genuine excitement for the future of our company. Our team and our people now that they are on par with the best organizations anywhere in the world, and they have equal and better opportunity in some cases to deliver our product, services, and solutions to our customers, backed by the most modern IT hybrid cloud infrastructure that is security at its forefront available in the market today. So that kind of jolt to the organization where people get very excited that they know that they have all the tools. They have everything that they need to go to war in the market and win is very exciting for people, and I think it really helped us push through that barrier in terms of revenue.
Brad, so great story, intense, my blood's pumping. This was fast. This was very, very fast. Do other companies move this fast? Do they have to move this fast?
This is incredibly uncommon, right? Like you said, you don't waste a good crisis. And I mean, when you look at a transformative business, one of the first words that come to mind is not going to be revenue growth and productivity. First off, it's disruptive. It is disruptive to the culture. It's disruptive to sometimes your customers. I mean, you can't take a critical system offline and just flip it around, but you know, heck, we're offline anyway, right? This is not common for us, and this has been a great capitalization of a problem. Now, where I'm gonna kind of flip that question here, and Jason, I find it so challenging to believe. Like, did you have all of these plans that you came up with? Like, you know, a crisis happens, and then you have all these net new thoughts and projects and ideas that just, like, how did this kind of go, right? Like the prep work, did you come up with it because of the crisis? Walk us through that.
So we had, of course, and you know, first off, it's all due to the team. Like the team that we had in place, both internally and with the partners we brought in, I think was critical to our success. A lot of the things that really got turned on, we like to say, you know, an overnight success, 30 years in the making. So we had kind of put a lot of those investments in. We had, you know, planted the seeds, the plants were growing, and the culmination, or kind of the harvest of all the work that we had done, was the digital transformation, which happened over those 2 months. But I don't want to discount the fact that, you know, you have to do some prep work. We luckily had already had some of the new hardwares that we'd then deployed, and some of the servers and workstations we deployed, but they were not actually deployed at that time. They were kind of in the closet and for future work. And we knew that we had to replace some servers, and we had a plan to do it, but it was going to happen, you know, in 6 months or 12 months. So we think about these things and preparing for them like most companies do. But for us, it was really about, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it. We're going to do it now. We're going to do it right. We're going to do it well, and we're going to move forward. And again, what we discussed in the results of the business is that is an exciting way for your people to get re-engaged with what they're doing on a daily basis, to know that you're fully prepared to go out and battle with your competition.
Yeah, like there's a lot of, for those kind of listening in here to a webinar, like this is not a normal process to kind of flip a switch and go so quickly.
Right.
But what is a norm here that we can see is that this is a total planning session constantly. When it comes time to, you know, knowing your partners and all that, like you mentioned that you spent some time and you knew what partner had what strength and such, and kind of how can you walk us through kind of that process of, you know, what were some of the skill sets that you needed to augment your own staff that you had to get outside?
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people at different businesses, you probably dread the number of, not spam emails, but unsolicited emails that come in your box and say, you know, we can offer this, and we can offer cloud, and we can offer hardware, and it's a bit of a drain to filter through those. It's also very critically important to make sure that you're managing those relationships and you're keeping them warm. You know, I always, as polite as I can, if someone reaches out and I'm not interested in buying something at that time, you know, put them into the contact database, let them know that in the future you may be open to some type of solution. So we had a number of vendors and partners that we had been having discussions with over the last, you know, 3 to 5 years, that when we were ready to commit and we needed a security partner to really guide us through on cybersecurity protection and threat protection and remediation, we knew who to engage with. When it came to the cloud, we had multiple cloud options. We had already had some cost-benefit analysis of the different major vendors that are out there. From a hardware standpoint, we had a long-time vendor in Dell that, you know, we felt very comfortable to go back and sole source some of that equipment that we were looking for, because we'd already had that trusted relationship with them. And then from a services standpoint, you know, very quickly leveraging our network, where we wanted to do the network segmentation, or where we wanted to do upgrading of our firewalls, and we used partners at Cisco that we've been working with to kind of get some guidance on the new Meraki infrastructure that we're using. So these were a lot of relationships that we had kept going on the back burner for a number of years that we leveraged when it came time to actually make these decisions. So I think it's important to cultivate those relationships. Whether or not you're going to work with someone in that day or week, it's important to have a good network and make sure that your network is strong with all the different partners should you want to engage in this project or something similar.
And Brad, I guess to take what you were saying about speed, it's not so much about, you know, you need to pick a certain speed at which to move, but it's to deconstruct that big picture into achievable tasks. Pick the timeline for those, know your partners, and then get it done in pieces.
Yeah, like the partnerships here is there's a lot of, I find a lot of organizations out there are exploring some sort of a cloud strategy to adopt. And a lot of the time they have their own internal team members doing a lot of the really technical research. And that sort of practice, very often at a high level, quickly skimming through, be cognizant, sure, but it takes the team away from things that are creating value to today's work. Like I have some customers and projects where they have their in-house team researching thoughts and ideas and concepts and it pushes back their actual productivity of the revenue generating activities they should be focusing on. And knowing that you have a series of partners that can have, that quick 30-minute chat, who have a whole fleet and network to do the research for you and gain you quickly what you need. I mean, I think the lesson here is there's a lot of these transformational projects you don't do in-house, and you leverage a technical resource of some kind to help be that expertise. Right. I mean, I like to use the analogy, like I drive a car every day, but not a mechanic.
Yep.
Right? You get on your knees.
That's a great point.
Yeah. Another way I look at it is with some of the hardware that we had that had not yet been deployed and some of the partners that we had lined up that we weren't yet using, it's kind of like we had all the ingredients in the fridge, we just needed to bake the cake. So when we baked that cake, we lit the candles, we had a big celebration, and life went on.
I'm writing down some of these lines of yours, Jason. I'm telling you, I'm stealing them and I'm making them my own. Great stuff. One more chance for everyone listening to get a question in before we wrap up. So if you have something that you just weren't sure you wanted to type out, type it out. We'll take a look at it. We'd love to be able to answer a question specific to your situation. While we're waiting for some people to think about that, I do want to thank very much Brad, yourself, Jason, for being here today. Now what I'd like to hear from you, Jason, is what's next for Mircom. What do you got going?
So part of why we were super engaged and interested in this type of corporate digital transformation was it lends itself very well to the product services that we are reselling to our partners and customers. So for a number of years, we were best known as a manufacturer of equipment that went into buildings. Today, we are really at the forefront of consulting with property managers, real estate developers, large REITs, and governments as well when it comes to smart cities infrastructure, and having them use us as people who have experience to modernize these buildings and infrastructure that they are both constructing new, retrofitting, and managing. So for us, we have now taken our learnings from the hybrid cloud architecture, from the partners who provide great servers and hardware and software and services that we would use ourselves. One of the other lines I like to use is we eat our own dog food. Now in tasting this and saying, this is really good, we can go back to our customers and repackage their own solutions along the lines of this template of a digital transformation that we've enacted and success with ourselves. So for example, in predecessor fire detection and alarm systems, people have been in a building and there's a bell ringing, and if it's a school, you don't know, is that a fire? Is that recess? Is it somebody smashed a card into the bell? The modernization of the information that comes through a paging system with the hybrid cloud architecture and the infrastructure that we're putting into these buildings beyond the equipment in terms of the network infrastructure, servers, routers that can publish from the edge up to the cloud and then redistribute through personal devices people are carrying. We have learned how to leverage the technology we use in our corporate infrastructure to provide better solutions to our end users and customers. So it was very exciting for us to have kind of this practical run through of how a transformation happens in our instance, and we are now packaging that up as a secret sauce solution to redistribute to our customers and partners all around the world.
That empowering those external stakeholders, the customers, like how do they feel about all this? How do they feel about this outcome?
The thing is, it's scary, right? Digital transformation is scary. They need support, they need help, and the best way to teach people is by example. So I think the conversations that we have with them to kind of explain, step 1, get Active Directory up and running. 2, get email up and running. Step 3, recall branch workstations, get them fixed up, redeploy. That ability to kind of walk people through the process gives a lot of comfort, and it's something that they need. You know, when you're doing large transformational projects, you don't want theory. Theory is good. It provides backing. It provides a point of reference, but you need practical expertise. And we are now bringing that practical expertise out to our market, and it's been well received by our customers.
Fantastic, fantastic. Again, Jason, thank you very much for being here today and telling us your story. Brad, as always, pleasure to have you here with us. And again, thanks to Dell Technologies for, you know, without your sponsorship, we wouldn't be able to hear these great stories. We thank you very much for that. To everyone online, don't forget to fill out your evaluation forms. They are important to us. They help us understand how to make these as informative for you and make sure we have that we're on the right mark as we deliver these webinars to you. Don't forget, in that vein, to check out our events page for other webinars and events that will be of interest to you, I'm sure. In the meantime, have a great day.